don't know if it's started on the meeting. Can we start at this early?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay. So we'll call the meeting to order. And first thing is the minutes from August 24th. Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from last month's meeting.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes or questions? I have one question and I wrote the minutes. I noticed, I put that Steve was here last month, but in my handwritten notes, he wasn't, so I'm not sure if he was or not.
Steve DeTrulio?
He was here?
Yep.
Okay, good, maybe I just
Yeah.
didn't write.
He was online. I think he's on Zoom.
Oh, great, thanks. Any other discussion about the minutes? All in favor?
Yeah.
All opposed?
I'm abstaining, so it was not the meeting.
Fair enough. So we're going to hear from Tori about the Green Building Committee. Tori.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you for being patient with me in the virtual world in the midst of a possible government shutdown. Things get crazy. So this is meant to be an update about the municipal green building and infrastructure policy that the Green Buildings group has been working on for a while now, and it is getting hopefully very close to a finish line. So little background, we spent a lot of time developing this and trying to, this is specifically for city-owned properties and maintained infrastructure. And we had talked about in what method we were going to put this policy forward, as well as the contents. And so we are now at the point where we have had great conversations with Peter on the sustainability planning side, as well as the city manager and Department of Public Works, as they're the ones who will be implementing a lot of this, and have worked on a lot of the contents of it. And now the city manager is looking to put it forward to the council for adoption. So I thought this was a good time. We've talked about elements of this as a group, but to go over what this kind of final form looks like. So I am going to see, oh, I might need to be allowed to share. That's possible, Kate.
I just want to clarify one thing. It's actually a city manager policy, so she'll share it with the city council. I might have misspoke, but the policy will be her policy that she'll share. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, which
That
do
way.
we know, do we have a timeline? Is that gonna happen at this upcoming city council meeting, or do you think that'll,
Hey, this one, so I think it'll be the next one.
okay. Yeah, so it's not being voted on as a council policy, it's a policy by the city manager. Thank you for that clarification. So let me see if I can share this with you all. Well, maybe not. Okay, Kate, I might need to.
Did not work.
I don't know. It's
Peter, can I ask what that means? Like, how does a policy by the city manager differ
work.
from,
Well, because she
or Kate,
Yep.
or Josh?
basically just a, staff oversight of projects. They'll make sure that the project has these green building components. So any project going forward. So
Okay.
city council policy can changes with every council. This will be more of a, I think it'll be more of a standing policy.
Got it.
Kate, I just sent it to you in case you didn't have it, because it's not letting me for some reason share. I do not get the power today, apparently.
Does it say you're not allowed to, or just?
It says I'm allowed to, but then it doesn't actually let me. So,
If you wait, try one more time,
okay.
and then I'll.
Oh, promising.
I just don't know how to click buttons. Sorry.
No, it's just one doesn't work, try the other.
Okay, are you all seeing this now?
Yep.
Yeah, we
Perfect.
Email or your Gmail. I don't know.
So,
We're seeing.
oh, you're seeing my Gmail?
Yeah.
Whoop, other one.
Lock.
Here.
There we go. Okay, So this is what the policy looks like. Basic breakdown is similar to any kind of rating system or policy you see in this realm. We have broken it down into criteria. One of the reasons we did this is because we wanted to recognize that we're both going to have situations where we have new buildings that are going to have, we're going to want these implemented on, these criteria implemented, but we're also going to have a lot of projects that aren't a new building that we're still want to see these criteria implemented. So the first big one is that on new buildings and major remodels, the city will be looking, and will be in the actual policy rather than just normal practice, but of a LEED Silver or equivalent for new buildings. And then in that, we've also clarified that there are some credits that we especially want to see in that process, because there's a lot of ways to go about getting a LEED rating. So we've recognized some additional credits that have additional meaning to this city, just clarifying that we want to make sure that those credits get met. So that's, optimizing energy performance, rainwater management, life cycle impact of the building materials, renewable energy, and electric vehicles. So it'll still follow the LEED criteria for those, but those will be part of those projects. So that one's exciting, and we are looking forward to having that in writing and feeling sure about that moving forward. And then we start breaking down into components. Many of these where if you're doing a LEED building on a new building like this, you're going to naturally be doing a lot of these things, but this is so that they apply for projects that aren't new. So we have mechanical systems. So this is whenever we're doing a project in the city that has a significant upgrade to HVAC or water heating or electrical services, that they're going to be designed without the use of fossil fuels, with the exception of backup emergency services like generators. Refrigeration will meet certain criteria to keep the especially harmful refrigerants out of our city buildings. Energy performance target we have as compared to a ASHRAE standard. And we're asking as well that there's a life cycle cost analysis done to find the highest efficiency mechanical system that will still pay back in that period. And that's just really kind of making sure that we're getting the most efficient systems we can within reason of cost. So that's on the mechanical side. Going to kind of the outsides of the building and where all the heat that we've made in the mechanical system escapes from. We're specifying that windows and doors have certain prescriptive R value and U values as the IECC. The current IECC, which is 2018 in New Hampshire, declares for appliances and water fixtures, we're asking that they meet Energy Star and WaterSense, which are two federal programs that are about water use efficiency as well as energy efficiency of appliances, or equivalent. There are going to be some systems that maybe don't have those ratings available to them, but we would still want to see efficient use. Roofs, we've clarified that we want to see a solar reflectance. So this is to keep the heat island effect from happening, at least similar to as it's defined in the LEED credit. So this is, choosing a white or light colored roof to reflect solar radiation, keep our city a little cooler. Low carbon concrete. So this is essentially 10 cubic yards is essentially. So if we're delivering a large amount of concrete, a truck of concrete to site, that we are considering the impact of that concrete, and we're specifying that we want the GWP of that concrete to be better than average. And this is something that is very doable from the experience of myself and some other people in this industry, in this area, but needs to be specified. So this is where we're asking for that to happen. with paving projects. So this is mostly going to be parking lots, but we're asking that the feasibility of low impact design and development is incorporated into the design of paving projects, as well as making sure that there's infrastructure for bicycles and scooters and alternative transportation methods integrated into the actual design or consideration of those paving areas. Exploring the feasibility of incorporating electrical infrastructure and conduit pathways for EV charging stations. This is something that's already been talked about on this committee, and but this is, if we're going to be paving, really making sure that we're looking at the feasibility of making this an easier option in the future. And the last one is exploring a design for any type of solar array or covered parking. So, anywhere where it says explore feasibility or explore design, it's not necessarily requiring that it's used, but it's required that it's considered in the project, so that at least the price and the feasibility is put up front, in the hope that by seeing that, the city can have more freedom to choose those projects as we move forward. The last real one is that in the CIP, we're asking that any projects that trigger any of these, so essentially any of the projects that meet these minimum requirements, if they do, that they're designated that they meet this, and that they're aware of this policy essentially, and this policy will be met. And that's just for tracking sake, and also to keep it front of mind for our both within the city, but then also for our residents, so that they're aware that this is something we're looking at. And then we have some, this minimus project is essentially, there's going to be things that don't fit into the minimus that we've put, the 10 cubic yards of concrete and the $250,000 for glazing an envelope, but there's a spirit to this policy in itself that we still want to be working towards green building and infrastructure in this city. So essentially, this is our way of just saying we want these types of things to be considered on any project, even if they are not directly related underneath. This last clause is just essentially to say that we don't want this to be something that keeps an important project from being able to happen. If there is a pothole in the middle of the city, we want them to be able to fill it. Not that that's ever happened. So, this is just the clause to essentially be saying, we understand that there's also, we're talking about buildings and infrastructure, and there's some things that are really important that we need our city to do in a timely way. And that if there's a undue financial burden, that the city also has the ability to be able to go forward in the way that's responsible for the taxpayers. So that is the policy that we will be seeing going forward. And then we've also asked that this be reviewed regularly. So we've set it to be reviewed on a 5-year basis. It might be reviewed more often than that, but we thought that that was at least a good minimum to keep things updated. And one of the things that we did purposely do is that we pointed towards standards that update in themselves. So this LEED Silver will be LEED in whatever version it is currently. And that was purposeful, as well as with ASHRAE or the IECC. It's whatever version is adopted currently is what this will be holding the city to. So in its nature, it will evolve over time, even without the review every 5 years. So yeah, that is the whole shebang of it. Does anyone have any questions that I can maybe hopefully answer?
Good time for questions. That's great. Kate?
I just wanted to share too, I think that it's important for the committee to know that because this is a city manager policy, what that means is that when we have anyone bid through an RFP process, this is the standard that they get. So they're bidding their projects based upon this standard.
Excuse me, I just realized we don't have Steve DeTrolio taking minutes. I don't know if we need to volunteer.
Sure, I can do it, Leslie.
Sorry to interrupt you. Kate.
No, that was it.
Yeah,
So I
okay,
think that that's
great.
important.
Yeah, and to add to that, you know, in my previous role as somebody who had to implement things like this, it was written with that in mind. So this was written in a way that's very similar to a lot of other sustainable design criteria that a contractor might see, and that's in the hope that if it is familiar and makes sense, that it will be implemented.
Josh?
Corey, I just want to commend you having essentially been active on this committee for the almost 10 years now. This is probably the most concrete, specific thing to impact the city government of Portsmouth that's been produced, and it's incredibly professionally done.
Well, thank you. And also I appreciate the concrete pun.
I think we had a question from Wes.
Yeah, very well said, Josh.
Mhm.
Tori, a good portion of the lead process is connected to third-party verification.
Mhm.
Have you considered that? I didn't see it in your description here.
Yeah, so we did, and that is why you see this lead equivalent term, and why we have this kind of footnote about alternative green building rating and certification paths. So we want to, you know, in situations where it makes sense on new buildings, we want to see a full lead process, and that includes the verification, but we're aware that that might not always be either possible or desired for different reasons. So we have this lead equivalent, which essentially means that, you know, we'd like to see the process done. But in situations, if we want to do a living building in the city, or we wanted to do passive house on certain projects that maybe make sense for that instead, that's open to this. So the intent is to follow the process, but it's purposely left a little bit open for decisions on each process. But yes, I agree. I think the verification is important. It was a big part of the conversation of putting this policy together, but also trying not to tie too many hands, in the hope that we can work on that moving forward, and that the verification is also going to be among us and the city of making sure that this policy is upheld.
Well, I just observed that done right, the ROI, return on investment for verification is substantial. And time after time, things are surfaced that hadn't been seen or hadn't been anticipated. This is in contrast to the very rigorous, time-consuming process involved in actually getting LEED certification and meeting all of the minutia that the Green Building Council requires.
Yeah, and that was that thought of the equivalent. If we're implementing the practices, that's what we're really after at the end of the day.
Bert, did you have a question?
Just a comment, kind of building on Josh. I think what I'm seeing in what you've done, Tori, is there's a lot of high level things like living buildings, and I have all these grandiose ideas, and they're not grandiose, they're necessary. And given the current reality, we need to really shift, not incrementally in some areas, but big time. You have that knowledge, but you were willing to go in and talk to the people who actually have to do this. And I think your model of taking time to go and talk to the people who are actually implementing shows up in the work as, oh my God, this is doable. And my heart is warm. That's how I can say it. And I'm very grateful for your knowledge, your skill, and we can use this as a model for how we get big ideas to actually work with the spirit of goodwill in the city. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Fred?
What would it take to apply a criteria like this to commercial developers in the city?
Will. It's trickier, you know, it's definitely a trickier process when we get into private realm. I think there's also a big recognition that we do have commercial private developers who are doing these things already. I think that would be the first step, is making it clear that these are implementable. These are things that have been implemented in Portsmouth. These are things that developers are already choosing to do in a lot of situations, and maybe starting with highlighting that to show people that we're really not that far. What we need is a more thorough adoption of these practices and celebration of these practices. And the Green Building and Infrastructure Working Group that's kind of our next step, is what type of incentives, what type of programs, in which direction do we go to, look at outside of just the city controlled buildings and infrastructure, implementing these types of change, honestly. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can be done. I'm not going to pretend to know the best way to do it, but that's what we're trying to figure out right now.
Couple more questions, Margot.
Tori, this is amazing because we just learned at the school board meeting Tuesday that roofing, paving are going to be done at all schools over the next 2 years, and a total mechanical overhaul at the high school. But I'm really thrilled because I keep bringing up the question about the solar arrays at some of our parking lots. So we're right, like for this coming CIP, it'll go through that RFP process. This is great news. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And in this, we actually did look at the current CIP to see which types of projects it would impact and kind of get a feel for that. So part of what we've also talked about is helping the city a little bit with, showing these things. Because I think that's important, is not just the policy, but also when things get implemented. So it'll be exciting to watch it unfold.
I just was going to add to, Tori's right, that's the next step for the committee, is looking at how do we make this more expansive to private development. That is incentive based, but I wanted to note that the city's been fantastic about being really cooperative on this front. Peter has been incredibly helpful in having those conversations internally. And as you all remember, our building inspector, chief building inspector, Shanti Wolf, also is very interested in looking at this, and even put a section for green buildings in the code last year that is there to build out. So we're getting a long ways, and we're getting a lot of support from the city.
Yeah, and I think some of that, like the question you had about how can we require this, it's a lot harder to require it than to incentivize it. So I imagine the first step will be somehow incentivizing it. Requiring it means a change of the building code that we may or may not be able to adopt even in some of these instances, but certainly we can incentivize it. The thought with this was, as Tori said, is just the city should show that at least it's doing, what it can. And this really kind of falls in line with what we've done with at least the library, the fire station, the water treatment plant. So now it's a policy.
So Tori, thank you. I understand you have to be somewhere.
I do have to jump. Thank you. Thank you all. I don't know, Peter, is there any end thing we need with this other than hooray?
Then provide it to the city council, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I have to jump, but have a great evening.
Inspiring.
Great. So next up, we have a community engagement committee update. I think Fred is going to do that.
Yes. We just had, just this past Tuesday night, we had the community climate conversation about buildings. And I wasn't able to be there, but the point is to raise ideas and concerns and questions about things we can do with buildings to make them more sustainable. That could potentially feed into the climate action plan. And I don't know if Jess, were you there, or can you give a summary of what happened? Or?
Yeah, sure. I owe you some notes, Kate. But there was a lot of good conversations. So Tori spoke about low carbon materials in construction. Aubrey spoke a lot about heat pumps and different types of heat pumps and that piece. And then Brian Murphy spoke about more of a green design and rethinking how we design to be more a part of nature and connected with nature versus separating ourselves from it so much. For me, it was really interesting because it brought up things that I didn't even know existed, which was exciting to hear. And just made me sort of start rethinking things. And Kate or anybody who was here who wants to chime in, my takeaway from the group who attended was that people were definitely interested. I think what they needed to know, there were lots of questions about like cost and efficiency, like how complicated is this for me to change my house from what I currently have to a different system? Some of the incentives and like New Hampshire Saves and that kind of stuff. And then just practical kind of things like, is this really helping if I do this? Or, so it really seemed like people just needed more education to be, this is what is an option for you. This is how much it would cost. This is what it's going to do for you. There were lots of questions about like electrical rates and changing systems and how is that going to actually affect my rates and those kinds of things. But everybody had very good questions and seemed very interested in the topic in general. So would you add anything?
No, I agree. I think that one of the things that was striking is when Tori was talking about embodied carbon. And that concept, it's complicated. And if you haven't encountered it before and you're talking about, how do you deal with embodied carbon? I think it just made people kind of go, oh, okay, so how do I wrap my head around this, new versus old, what's there is there. So this concept of, everything we do has a carbon footprint you have to think about. So I thought that was definitely one of the takeaways.
If I might make a comment, I came in late when Jess and I had talked earlier in the day. And she said, well, it's an hour and a half. Yeah, an hour and a half. And probably the first 45 minutes will be the presenters with some questions. And then there'll be a break and people will be able to get up and write on sheets. Well, we never got to sheets because there were so many questions. There was so
We
much
had about
engagement.
10 minutes at the end.
I thought that was fabulous. It's a real testimony to the quality of your event.
Thank you.
Excuse me, if I could just chime in again, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, but the prior one I commented about light pollution. And actually one thing that people can do to help the environment and save money at the same time is turn off their lights. We do have a lighting ordinance in Portsmouth. It's not enforced. And I think there's just not awareness. And one good example is our street lights. Some of them, the light should only be directed down. If you look around, some do that, some are shaded, but others have uplights. And then another just brief comment is we don't have any ordinances around interior lighting. And some commercial buildings, I understand banks, but there are commercial buildings that keep all their lights on all night long. I think, again, just trying to put it out there. Thank you for having me. And I'm really thrilled with what everyone's doing. But there was an interesting piece I did send to Kate, and I'm happy to send it to the group that was in the Portsmouth Herald about light pollution about a month or so ago. There's so much information out there on it now. And there are simple things that people could do that do save money and, help the environment.
Excuse me, could you say your name into the
Oh,
microphone?
excuse me. I'm Melissa Regazio. I live in
Great, thank you.
Portsmouth
You were here. in
and I am a
July.
lighting designer. Yes. So my niche thing is light pollution.
Yeah. Well, let's get
Great.
back to community engagement for now. And
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
perhaps when we talk about the CAP update, there's lots of
Okay.
strategies in the CAP that you could review and put comments in still.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And I would just add, I think that was actually a question from the crowd last night about how we deal with all the lights being left on, and I don't know if there's any definitive answer to it, but it
Yes.
was part of the conversation. Is like, what do we do about?
I think that
Yeah.
might require state law, which enables towns to actually require places to turn off their lights. So.
Just, would you briefly talk about who the audience was to characterize what type of people were attracting to the conversation? And because this is part of a series, are there continuing same members, new? How did you experience? And how?
I actually wish I had the sign-in sheet with me. I apologize. I have it in my car, but I raced over here from kindergarten open house. But we actually, when we asked people to sign in for attendance purposes, and I addressed that initially saying, please at least just leave your name because we're just trying to get an idea of how many people are attending. And we actually had a question, is this your first conversation or not? And then pretty much a resounding, there was a space for emails and do you want to be informed about future conversations? And I would say pretty much everybody said yes to that question. And I briefly glanced at it, but I would say like maybe not quite 40, but it seemed like there were a fair amount of people that this was their first conversation they had been to. So I definitely saw a lot of, is this your first conversation? Yeses. So. But I can get more specific data for the group
Well,
once
just-
I look at
I'm
that.
looking at the big picture and where we're going next. So that-
Yeah, and I did also talk about the next one. I don't remember if I actually told the date, but I told everybody we'll have another one next month. It'll be about health and climate change. So I did try to start putting that seed out there as well. Mhm.
And so that's the next thing on my list is the community climate conversation regarding health. And this is looking at the health impacts to individuals about from climate change, whether it's from heat or other thing is vector-borne illnesses that are increased, like, more tick populations that could carry more, spotty mountain fever, whatever, things like that. So it'll be Jess Dolan is working on that. Trying to line up some speakers. There's some issues with the date right now because of some speaker availability. But Jess, you want to talk any more about what you're planning for that event?
I was planning on doing an overview of how climate change is directly related to health of the planet and all the inhabitants on it, and then hoping to have a speaker to. Unfortunately, the few speakers I've reached out to aren't available on Saturday, October 21st. But I have sent some emails out to some UNH professors asking if they can't do it, someone that would be able to do it. I was going to see if there were any climate activists at Portsmouth Hospital that maybe wanted to speak. And then maybe reaching out to the Eco Club. Not sure what the staff is like over in the the high school, but to see if there is anyone that would be fit to talk about how climate change affects health.
We're shooting for the October 21st because it's sort of like the second 6 months anniversary of Earth Day. So we had an event on April 21st. We're shooting for October 21st to as the second half of Earth Day.
What's the time and location?
It's not definitely. Well, we have the location is the library, Levinson Room, 1 o'clock in the afternoon is the current plan. But
I believe it coincides with Portsmouth Sustainability Day.
also on
However,
that,
my other plans are happening that day.
also on the day we're working with, and we as Portsmouth Climate Action is working with 3S Art Space on their Upcycle Runway event, where they're going to be showcasing, fashion made out of recycled clothing, things like that. It's on the evening of the 21st. And the next day, the 22nd, we're working on the 4th annual EV show at the Bridge Street Light from 10 a.m. Lot from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And Effie is driving that and with some help. And we're getting, and Josh kind of got to help us get kicked off. We got approved to use a lot on that date. And we're working now with vendors to bring their wares to show people. And maybe sell some cars and bikes.
Brett, can you tell the date again?
October 22nd,
22nd.
10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Tori, have you reached out to Emily Thompson at the healthcare workers?
Jess.
Sorry, I'm so bad on names. Jess, have you reached out to Emily Thompson at the healthcare workers?
I have not.
A walking Rolodex.
Okay.
There's certainly active people in that group who are here on the seacoast
Okay,
and motivated.
I can do that. Thanks for the recommendation, Wes.
And finally, we're continuing to try to promote the use of Bright Action. Bright Action is a site that we put up for the residents of the city to help them learn about actions they can take to reduce their carbon footprint. A lot of people want to do something, but they don't always know how, and this site has lots of resources. Like we were talking earlier about, installing solar panels or whatever, how much does it cost, and what is the payback period, things like that. So a lot of helpful things for people considering taking action to consult information there before they spend any money. And also to measure the impact so they can see, okay, last year I used this much carbon, this year I used this much because I did these things, I replaced my light bulbs, things like that. And we can see the collective action of the community. So it's not like, scientifically accurate to the milligram, but it's kind of gives a general indication of the impact that we're having as a community, and not just at the city level, but at the community level. So we encourage people to sign up. Apparently not everybody in this group is signed up. So, if we can get you set up if you're interested. I think we have 68 households as of a few days ago, and we just signed up a few more last night at the at Liars Bench. So the number keeps on growing. And hopefully it's having an impact. And we're starting to plan for Earth Day 2024. So the work never stops.
Start early enough.
Okay,
I just had a question about Bright Action. One of my neighbors asked me, is it anonymous? So like, can you sign up and do it and not, I think this neighbor was nervous about, having their information out there and everybody knowing, what their footprint was. Like,
fair enough.
So, can they?
I
Is
hope
it
you can
anonymous?
See your individual footprint.
Okay, I'll tell them that, because that's, yeah.
I guess
And-
the
My neighbor
site
had asked.
administrators could, which is Fred and me.
We can't even see that. We can just see.
Yeah.
Nope,
I could.
not supposed to look at that.
Those supposed to.
Right.
No, we can't really see much information about the users, no.
Yeah.
And you don't have to use your real name. You have to use email that works, but it can be an alias to your email that nobody recognizes.
Okay. Yeah, I think my neighbor just was like, I don't know that I want everybody to know all
Yeah.
of my,
It's a legitimate concern.
like,
Yeah, it's a good question.
put information about your house in there and
Yeah,
that's-
right, that's what they are.
Yeah, and you'd be more candid if people don't know too.
Right.
Jess?
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on something Fred said. He talked about sustainability weekend, which was kind of an idea of Effie, which I think is really great in that we knew we were going to try to plan another conversation, and we knew the upcycle event was going on and likely Josh's EV vehicle thing. So we are really trying to hopefully cross promote each other to really make it look like a community weekend focused on sustainability. We've even talked about if anybody had any interest, like being at the farmer's market that morning to do some tabling, whether it's to promote other events or talk about some other pieces of sustainability. And now it's actually turning into a little bit of a week potentially, because the library recently asked Portsmouth Climate Action if we would potentially collaborate with them and the World Affairs Council to host a movie later that week. So if anybody knows of anything else or has any other ideas, like if we could have a whole list of sustainable events that week that we could all say, this is what Portsmouth as a community is doing. I think that could be impactful and powerful, and kind of more than just a day, but
Excellent.
I just wanted to comment. I'm in Norway and I get your email. The Green Wall, a movie.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it. How many of you have heard it?
Just last week.
And then you came on and said it was great. I went on and watched a preview. Inspiring. I'm coming back on the plane and seeing our coming into Greenland. Africa has this green center and the dark top. The green wall is being proposed to go from one side of Africa to the other side to stop desertification. It's going to be the largest man-made area project in the world. It's going down to the villages to do things. So when I think about individual heaters, and then you get this huge scale, and it's already gotten money to go. And so what I just get warmed when I'm in Norway, you're coming and you're coming. We are influencing each other. We are a community of practice. And I'm sharing that because I just can't, it blows me away. That somebody could think of it and actually get it. It's happening.
And it was Bert, you talking about the urgency of climate work that got us talking about Half Earth Day, that a lot of the world celebrates because one day a year is not enough for Earth Day. So the roots of it partly would be. Anything else? Yeah,
How about-
Josh?
Question for Bert, is that streaming on any streaming service or?
They just had the preview. The World Council is asking us to co-sponsor it for that day.
Okay.
And then I think, I'm still I was up late seeing that and I said, it's something that I think we're going to want to use for inspiration. Yeah.
And then a comment, Fred had mentioned 3S's Project Upcycle. For anyone interested in what it is and does not know, I participated as one of the models pre-COVID, whatever year that may have been. Essentially, they bring in a number of fashion designers. They give them a lot of clothing from thrift stores, and then they introduce them to their models. They're given maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes. I remember them taking all my measurements, and it might be 24 hours, however long. Then the models came back. We got haircuts, makeup, everything else. And then we tried on the outfits, the manning adjustments as needed. And then they actually do a physical runway at 3S. And it was a lot of fun, both for the crowd. I had an absolute blast as a model. My artist saw all my Where the Wild Things Are tattoos. So he made me a professionally made Max/Wild Thing outfit. And apparently it caused a huge debate if whether it was if it was fashion or if it was a costume. So I only came in second place, neither here nor there. But it was a lot of cross-pollination at the event between people who were more concerned about the environment and fast fashion and everything else, along with people who are just like models and the 3S art space. So to your point, it was one of those events and it was a lot of fun.
Did you get to keep the outfit?
I did. I wore it out that night to the bars and I still have it. So.
And 3S is happy to do cross promotion with us once we have more information about our events. So that's great. Anything else about community engagement?
I'm curious as to how Liars Bench went.
Great. A lot of good information was shared by the city and a lot of great questions were raised. A lot of great networking, meeting people that are like-minded and sharing experiences.
What kind of numbers?
Probably 2 to 3 dozen people were there at the height of it. It was cool outside, just like it is tonight.
Yeah.
It was more of an informal event on the cap where Peter spoke, he answered some questions, and then there was mingling. I thought it went very well. It was a great forum for something like that. And I've been texting with Dagan since, and he's willing to do it again.
That's great. Well, yeah. And were these people that were already familiar, had attended a cap event or?
I didn't recognize everyone there for what that's worth. So although there are a lot of people here, whether it be from Portsmouth Climate Action or from the city or from this committee, but there were people there who I knew, but I didn't know they were interested in these topics, people there who I'd never seen in the past 10 years.
Cool,
Well, the faces were new to me also.
cool.
Well, and I really appreciate Portsmouth Climate Action giving up your regular meeting night to go. That was really helpful for getting the
Yeah.
numbers up for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Good
Meeting in a
questions, conversation.
meeting with a beer is always appealing.
Yeah.
that was-
I like that part, yeah.
Great, so the next topic is Soul Smart update, and I talked to Herb and John Cardy. And Peter, they thought you would be updating about
Sure,
that
yep.
from now on.
Do you want to?
Oh, no, you just told me this. I don't know.
Well, I think we heard about Soul Smart from them, but it's basically a program. Do people know about Soul Smart?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, well, I'll give you the quick overview of what Soul Smart is and then where we are. So Soul Smart is a program that encourages communities to make make solar more available in the community. So it takes a look at all your practices as a municipality and provides advice and incentives, not incentives, but encouragement to go to a higher level in their grading system. So you start out as a bronze, then you can become gold, silver, even silver, gold, even platinum. And at each step you have to do more. And a lot of it has to do with your building codes, incentives, reducing price, building permit times, things that you can do to make it easier for people to implement solar on their properties or commercial solar or just anywhere in the community. And so it's not like it makes a huge change in terms of whether you can or can't do solar. It just tries to make solar easier, I think is the way I describe it. The first step is writing a letter and saying we want to engage. The city manager signed a letter that we sent in to them. They'll send us back a questionnaire kind of thing, I guess. I think we'll probably quickly qualify for bronze and then see what it takes to go to the next level. So, yeah, so we're underway.
Right. Cool. The next item is ordinance update, and I think that refers to this committee ordinance. That's how I read that. Is there anything new on that?
Okay, do you know what evening it's scheduled for? the
It's
first
scheduled
vote?
for the first reading will be this coming Monday.
Okay,
When is it scheduled for? I'm sorry.
First reading is this coming Monday.
so that
So-
means the
Mm.
second reading, where there'd be the public hearing, would be the 16th of October, which would be
Is that
Cool.
right?
assuming the 16th isn't Indigenous Peoples' Day.
It's either, no, it's
not.
the 17th. It's
What's
this,
the 16th?
it is the 16th. Yeah, the 16th.
So it would be, if anyone here wanted to speak during the public hearing on it, they can. It's an unlimited amount of time. Although we ask you to try to keep to 3 minutes. And yeah, so that would be it. So it's possible that come the meeting after the 16th, so the first actual meeting in November, third reading could pass, and then this would become would no longer be a blue ribbon committee and would become a official standing committee.
Starting January?
Well, it would be, yeah, but it's just in time because you've got 2 meetings for appointments
Oh,
in
yeah.
advance. So then everybody will have to, after the third and final reading, everyone will have to race to get their applications in from the committee
Okay.
so that they can go on the next council agenda for
And-
appointments.
On that note, I did speak with John Kennedy, who's been on the committee and active for years. And he asked that his name not go forward to be on this standing committee, takes on the spot. He still plans to attend meetings, but he doesn't want to take that away from anyone else who does want to be a voting member.
And can I just ask, how do we end up leaving it? Is it everybody will be on and then it'll slowly
Whittled down.
reduce down to a set number? Okay.
Yeah, that's what went forward is my
Correct.
understanding.
That's what.
Yeah, I had COVID for the last meeting. Sorry, guys. That's why I wasn't here. But yeah, that's what came forward.
Good. Any questions about that?
Where can I find the ordinance?
In the council packet on October 3rd, you can just pull it up online. It'll be
So-
in the
Yeah.
Council packet.
Do you know if it went forward as a member of the
It'll be
school
up,
board, or do we have to assign, so it's a generic school board member?
Yes.
Correct,
Correct.
okay.
It should already be up, right?
Oh, we're gonna snap.
Oh, I don't know if it's gonna post online till Friday.
It'll probably be available by Friday this week.
It'll be what?
It'll be available probably by Friday this week for the meeting on the 3rd, the packet.
Oh,
So it's- it's-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the packet hasn't come out. till
Right.
today.
I don't know.
It's October 1st, so.
I forgot it was so close.
Yeah.
It's really close.
And so then the potential third reading would be November 6th. Am I
Yes.
doing my
Yeah.
calculating right?
So,
But
no,
no-
November, not November sixth. So what happens in November, the election is the 7th. So instead, our first meeting in November is the following day, that Wednesday, and all we do is certify the vote. So I think
Okay.
there may only be one
There's one.
actual meeting in November, which would
November
be
13th.
the following
Okay.
week.
There's also a strong chance that if there's no opposition, that the council has done this a few
Correct.
times this fall, where we've moved to suspend the rules and go ahead and do third reading right after second reading. So there's a chance of that too. So note that if there's no speaking in opposition,
It could have
That's-
happened by our next meeting.
Thanks. So climate action plan update.
Okay. So, talked a little bit about last night's brewery event at Liar's Bench. So that was really to try to reach a different sort of audience and engage people and just teach them that there was a climate action plan coming out and that we're up to a certain number of strategies right now that we're still taking feedback on. And I'll actually bring up, in case other people haven't seen it yet, on the city page, sort of our last feedback is going to be on the climate action plan page. We're taking feedback in this tool called Easy Retro, which Steve Whitman from RPD put together. So you go to the climate action plan page
Oh, cool.
and yeah, it's really cool. It's like you can thumbs up. These are the top 17 strategies based on how much of an impact they'll have on emissions. And they're also the highest cost strategies. So sort of maybe the more contentious strategies that we need the most support for, or maybe the most just general feedback on whether or not we should implement them. But you can go in and give it a thumbs up. There's no thumbs down button, but you can leave a comment if you want to thumbs something down.
You can put a comment in. There are
Yeah.
comments on
So you
some.
can expand it and read other people's comments. But these are just the top 17 and they're split up into the big sectors. And if you do want to go in and look at the full 84 strategies, there is a big master list of them and they're ranked by their impact and their cost.
And
And
thought on this is that the 5, if it's a 5 and a 1, it'll be the easiest to implement, is one way to think about it.
right, so like high impact in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, low cost. So that's going to be low hanging fruit that hopefully we can get done sooner rather than later. And take on maybe the bigger challenges slowly over time, I think is sort of what we're hoping to do. But if you still want to comment and give feedback on all the strategies, you can do so through it's like a Survey Monkey survey. So you can sort of write in the name of the strategy. I think they're just sorted out by letters and numbers. Write it in and give feedback if you're still willing to do that, or if you want to tell the people to.
And
give
how long
feedback.
is it open for feedback, do you know?
So they wanted to close it by the end of September, but I think we asked to keep it open mid-October, or at least until as long as we possibly can, just to keep getting feedback. But
Yeah, they
we-
want, at
we
some
can
point, they
push it.
want to start writing the plan.
Right.
So they have to close it and then put it into the context of here's all the feedback we got public from the online, and then they'll start the plan. So I think they said, I think they said,
Kate. Okay, I'm on the city's website. How do I get there?
Okay, so if you go to the planning department, it's easiest just to Google Portsmouth's climate action plan, but if you go to the planning department and click on planning and some sustainability, then go to plans and reports. And under there is the climate action plan. And so it'll be linked on the sidebar on the right, but it's also in the first paragraph of the webpage. So if you start reading, it says, see these strategies and leave feedback here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Share my screen too.
And people have been asking when the plan might be done. Are we still thinking the end of the year?
Yes.
I think so.
Good.
We're
That's what I've been
pushing-
telling people, so.
We're pushing it for it, and the council really wants it, so that's what
Yeah.
we're pushing for.
Right.
Yeah, I think they'll probably start writing hopefully soon, but it sounds like they're finishing up their emissions forecasting is what they're calling it, using the different net zero goals and trying to work around that. So I think the next 2 months will be finishing those up, getting the strategies in, and then just writing. So that'll be
Right.
hopefully
And
soon.
the idea too is that when it's, even though it's done, there still is opportunity for outreach after that. So we might do some follow-up outreach with the plan and when it's complete, because it'd be a good time to bring it out to the community that way too.
Wes?
What? There's the huge list.
Yep, the big one.
And then there's the
Then there's-
5 topics or 1, 2, 3, 4 strategies.
Yep, there's
What-
17 here, but under 5
Well,
categories.
under 5 categories.
Yep.
Which is very digestible. What's the difference? What's the relationship between the two?
Between the long list and the
Yeah,
the short
exactly.
list. So these ones up here on Easy Retro, they're the highest cost. And they also are supposed to have the highest impact out of all of the 84 strategies. So these are sort of the top 17 that might be the most controversial or maybe are the ones that we want to start doing right away or start planning for long term in terms of budgeting. So it's
So in terms of getting community support, it's not gonna be hard to get community support for a thing that has a really high impact that doesn't cost much.
right.
But it's gonna be hard to get community support for something that has high impact and costs a lot. So the
Yeah.
idea was put the ones up there, they're gonna be harder to get community support for and see what kind of response you get. Then you can select from those the better choices maybe to make.
Got it. And who's making the determination of the impact?
The consultants.
All right.
And you can go in and look at all of them. That longer list,
I know.
and you can see the impact, and you can make a comment on that too. So if you don't like the way
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did
yeah.
it, that's where you can say, this is wrong, it should be this. That's good information.
I'd just like to make an observation that we didn't know what a climate action plan was. The big idea was, how can we get the biggest impact for our buck? And what's going to be crucial to do, not just cosmetic. Seems to me this is where we're at now. And that's really a very encouraging thing.
Yes, it's funny, it's, the climate action plan is all about actions.
But the question is, which actions, and everybody's going to take action, but we might want to take a feel-good action when what we really need to do is buckle in and take that's where I think we can get behind doing what this is talking about.
Right.
Great. Any other questions? The next one is Local Energy Solutions Conference in November 2nd.
Oh, yeah, that was an update from me. So I was talking to Beth Susie from Clean Energy New Hampshire. So they're organizing a big local energy solution conference in November. And they haven't, I believe it's opened up to buy tickets so far. It's gonna be like an all day long conference with 20+ vendors, 9 panel sessions, and there's gonna be a big keynote address, an exhibitor hall. There's gonna be an EV expo, breakfast and lunch. And they have a bunch of speakers, but they are giving us a few tickets. So I think one for staff and then one for a member of the sustainability committee, if anyone wanted to go.
Where is it again?
Concord? I think. Yeah.
This is a big deal. This has been going on for years. They packed the hall. and they have some great speakers.
Yeah, the website lists so
Ah,
far the agenda right
really
now. It
wonderful.
looks really
What is the date again?
November 2nd at it's from 8 to
What a
4:30.
birthday present.
Oh, it's in Manchester, sorry, not Concord. The Doubletree Conference Center. But if anyone was interested, just let me know whenever. you
I'm
want.
looking at Effie on this one.
Yeah.
She's been leading a lot of
Big
efforts.
smile.
I'm a member of Clean Energy, so I don't know if I would get a ticket
Oh, you
that
actually
way. So,
might. I think that's how
you
we
know, I
got
know
ours.
this group is also a member, you know,
Right.
Portsmouth got a
The city
membership.
membership, yeah.
So, everybody look at the website and see. Thank you. The next thing I added to the agenda based on the minutes that I wrote last month, which was Bert, you said after hearing Tom Morgan present about solar arrays and utility scale arrays and solar farms, that at this meeting, we should put on the agenda what the follow-up for this committee should be. So I put it on the agenda and you're back from Norway. Here you are. So, you know, we could do a work group or I don't know what you had in mind, but I was thinking it was something like that, an ad hoc committee or.
Well, what I'm thinking is we had basically a consultant come in and give some ideas. And we had some pretty good discussion. And just like Tori came out with an actually, what is reasonable to do? And I think there's some folks here, particularly Fred and others, who had looked at solar and was at the high school. So I didn't want to let that just come and drop. That was, I thought we would say, is there a next step? How do we, what I'm impressed with, I should go way more often. I'll come back and say, wow, I mean, we're actually down to getting things done in place with real things. Is there something from what we heard, like one thing like looking through the ordinances and changing a few words? I don't have the time or skill or interest, but I think some of the folks might have. That's where I was going, and they're not here tonight. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas of how to get what was said in action.
I don't have an idea about that per se, but I would say, because we've had Chris Rose present, it'd be really interesting to get students involved in this effort, because I know that's what they worked on, is where we could put solar on city property, and they did cost analysis for their projects for him last year. And that's one of my goals, is to get students more engaged, because I feel like they come and they talk to us, but I think they get a little disenfranchised because what really kind of happens with their ideas. So it might be a way to bring them back to the table if there is work around this topic.
So let me see if are you suggesting that he might take it up as a project for his students to look at that? Or I'm not, or
He
just,
did already. So my suggestion is if a subcommittee is created to look at solar in the city, there could be some real value in engaging some students to be part of that conversation, discussion, work, if they are interested.
So Kate,
I wanted to just note, I sit on the Energy Advisory Committee as well. The Energy Advisory Committee is talking about solar and where solar goes in the city and how to implement solar in the city. So that's kind of what since they've implemented community power, that's kind of their next focus that they're talking about right now. And last night had even a consultant from Revision Energy come in to present on solar and the new law around solar and how cities can invest in that. So I think they've already kind of started that discussion. So I think it would be valuable if sustainability is also going to talk about solar, to have some cross-pollination there rather than both committees both working on it independently. I think that and it's something I suggested to them last night, Because they know that sustainability has energy and the climate action plan is one of the purposes. And so I suggested to them that they consider, because they're talking about whether or not they become a permanent committee, now that community power is in place. That they consider having a member that sits on both committees. I've been doing that, but I think that it shouldn't be a city councilor. They should have somebody coming here to represent what they're doing. So you guys get a report back of all their discussions. And then Peter Britz goes to both, so. So he
If I
knows.
can-
Didn't go to that meeting unfortunately, because I was the other meeting last night, but I mean, I guess
Great.
if I can add one thing to that, I still think it might be beneficial if kids or other people want to get involved. One of the things that could support the Energy Advisory Committee is locations where they could put them like parking lots or roofs that they think they should look at, or I don't know.
So I want to change my hat from being facilitator to being a committee member and say that, I've talked to Tom over years. I used to be on Portsmouth Smart Growth with him. And what I took away from his presentation last month was, one, we have to look at zoning, look at the definitions for utility scale, solar array, solar farm, open space. Those were three things he specifically mentioned. And then, I don't know enough about, but principal use and whether it's commercial or city, what's allowed, what isn't. But the second thing that Tom spoke about, I thought it was really fun hearing about this, the GIS mapping and, doing all this stuff with computers. You probably know about all this, but it just sounded so space age to me to eliminate wetlands, inappropriate areas, if you want to put aside affordable housing areas, fine. And then what's left? Where can we put solar? So I thought the ordinances and definitions, and then the GIS mapping was what I took away from Tom. And, I'm happy to work with the Energy Advisory Committee. I mean, it's a super job on the community power. So, but not that I want to be the one representative or whatever, but I do think it's important to cross pollinate. Josh?
Just as far as any solar ordinance goes, it wouldn't be worthwhile bringing it to the city council before the next council is sworn in, simply because anything that's brought to us needs to go through 3 readings before the council changes to the next one. And if something hasn't reached 3rd readings yet, they have to start over.
Great, thank you for that practical advice.
I would just like to check and follow up on what you said. I think hearing what Effie said, are those similar things that the committee has talked about, or they're the same things?
Yeah, they were talking last night about where to put the arrays.
And how to, and look at the city and all that kind
But
of
they
stuff.
haven't done an analysis of like everyone's, it's from talking to a consultant who said, this is where we are building them. Do you have spaces like this in the city? And, specifically, they look for old landfills, brownfields locations.
We have that.
Yeah, so we have a few of those. And because they're looking for large spaces to build arrays. But they're not talking about projects like the high school.
Right.
So the group we were talking to, Revision Energy, we were talking to last night, they weren't there to present on PPA projects, which is like what we have it. They were there to present on this new credit exchange for your kilowatt hours. So you can essentially use your kilowatt hours up to 5. It's five for each city, and to use as credits against major solar farm projects. So they're looking for spaces for major projects. And then you get money back
Yeah.
by using your credits.
But
Yeah, so,
there's drawbacks with it too, like
Yes,
and.
it's complicated.
and
it's
to me,
complicated. It's
yeah,
very
it is.
complicated.
And Tom mentioned some of that,
Yes.
with habitat, wetlands, and I don't remember all of it, but my thing is, I don't think our ordinances are ready yet for all that.
But is the committee discussing doing it on both public city-owned land and private land, or just one,
Just public.
just public?
So
'Cause the
public,
ordinance
we
would be
don't need
private.
internet.
Yeah, so
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the ordinance would apply to only private
Okay,
property owners. Yeah. So, yeah, the city can do what it wants with its own land. So municipal zoning, so.
And it's also because there's, at some point, there should be some funding from community power. The ideal thing is that we build our own solar, and that solar is what the community uses so that we get the credits from it. If we put money towards a solar array that someone's building somewhere else, they're gonna get the credits from it. So we're not really bringing green energy to the city. We're getting money for someone doing green energy,
Right.
maybe somewhere else.
Right,
Yeah.
so we're talking about these short-term contracts, like they're doing these 5-year contracts right now. So we're talking about if we could essentially use our credits for, let's say, 5 years. And earn money back on those, we would get our credits back in 5 years, and it would take at least that period of time to build our own array. So we were talking about, where are the trade-offs?
right.
What works the best? Do we pursue both? How do we pursue it?
Well, the other thing I heard Tom say was using the private developers to build solar arrays can be a tax benefit to the city because a solar array doesn't need classroom space or fire departments or whatever. And, I mean, that's as much as I understand from what he said, but they do pay taxes.
yeah, both these two conversations were jogging my memory. And I had mentioned last night that the city does have solar array tax credits. And I was trying to remember if the tax credits were just for residential or for commercial. I believe it's just for residential. And then what was jogging my memory before is the conversation on RECs, because it must have been 5 years ago where I convinced the city council to spend extra money to purchase renewable energy using RECs. And it was such a novel, brainy thing to hear that's actually being considered by our experts versus just me trying to get Peter Rice to and the council to vote for something.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the challenges are around calculations because you can't sell more than you have to sell, essentially. But projects that we have in the city on municipal properties count against our credits. So the project at the high school counts against us, essentially, because we lose those.
Right.
Because that energy is being bought, that energy is being generated and we're buying it.
Right.
But those projects are pretty close to the point where we'll actually be able to buy the panels
Right.
and then get the,
Then
be
we
able to
own
take
them.
credit.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
Yeah. So it's such a complicated calculation. So that's the great thing about the Energy Advisory Committee is you have a lot of people who are experts
Yes.
specifically in this field. Yes, and you can sit and calculate those things.
So it sounds like, I'll throw this out there, we have an opportunity to look at the private side, look at our zoning ordinances and share the GIS information. That'd be the same for both, overlap maybe. If we wanted to have a work group of this committee,
And
but we don't have many people here tonight, I'm noticing.
the other thing I want to add is trying to get and I still call it the Renewable Energy Committee, what's the official name of the committee?
Energy
The
advisory.
Energy Advisory Committee to work with at least Mr. Rose
Yeah.
and trying to get the students involved, because if they're just talking about public land, that's what the students, they'd see the most reward because it'd be more likely something to happen on public land that they could take credit for.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's what his project
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's a great idea.
So the idea of having a work group looking at the private side, the development side, which is more what Tom addressed last month. Is there any interest among people here to be on a work group for that?
Well, I had a feeling that Fred was, that's
Yeah.
why, and maybe even Aubrey.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Or
I would-
Herb.
Or Herb.
John.
what?
Or Herb or John.
Yeah. So there's several people who might be, and I would just like to put it on the agenda again for next week,
You mean next month?
next month. Yeah,
Okay.
I lose,
That's all right.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna meet every week. For next month. And the question that would be on it, and I'm trying to think, would between Kate and you, Effie, is there somebody from the Energy Advisory Committee like to just come so we can scope out what each committee is doing? At least what we're thinking about, what they're thinking about. And I think just keeping it in the conversation might start to clarify the boundaries that we're looking at and the sections and who's doing what, and then maybe what needed to be done.
I'm emailing Counselor Tabor right now. I'm emailing Counselor Tabor right now to suggest to him that we start that conversation.
Right.
I think that I love that people in this committee don't wait. till it's done.
When
We're
if
part
I
of-
forget, if I leave, it won't happen tonight.
We're part of the global brain. I love it. All right.
The
so-
other thing I just want to mention on solar follow-up, looking at the expanded
Actions.
list from the
Yeah.
climate action plan. I did a word search on solar and there's a lot in here
lot,
about
yeah.
solar and
Interesting.
I want to appreciate that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, this group has always said, we don't wait for the climate action plan. If we've got something in mind, we just go. We have two tracks going. One's
Yeah.
the climate action plan and one's. stuff in the
And
meantime.
if you know how to use chat, what GPQ X, Y, Z, and search it and say, what are the 5 things
Yeah.
that the climate action plan has in it already, so we could build on that?
Wow.
And I'll tell you why.
No.
Has anybody used that yet?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure
Not-
they have.
Not that way.
I was, I have an update from one later on about that, so I
Next
can
week
go
we can
into
talk
it.
about that.
What?
Let's talk about that next week.
Yeah. I'll wait on that. I had something else.
This is
Surprising.
Thursday night, right? Well, great. Thanks, everybody. And I might follow up with Fred, Herb, John, Aubrey in the meantime, and Kate. So the next thing, Josh, I wanted to ask you about the EV charger.
Yeah, so this is the other ordinance, which is very similar to the solar ordinance, just on the premise that involves rezoning and changing districts. I have not gotten a status update yet from the city manager, and I know she will not be at the meeting on Monday, but I will see her before the next meeting. And I'm also going to check with Counselor Moreau to see, because it was on the agenda at one point for the
And use-
land use committee, but it wasn't discussed there. So I'm gonna track this down and
Yeah.
so next time.
What's the 30-second?
Oh, so
Where
with
you-
that was,
Please.
and I did work with Tom on this, very early last year. I brought forward an ordinance which the city council referred to the planning board. And it was to help private landowners know with certainty, based on where they live, whether or not they would have to get a special, a cup, is it?
Conditional use permit.
Conditional use permit to install what type of charger? Whether it be if you want to do a level 3 charger somewhere, or if you're just doing a level 2 at your house, whatever it might be. The goal is just to make it easy for anyone
Actually,
who
would
owns
it-
property.
Would it be a special exception or variance? Is that what he was saying? Because there's no conditional use permit for solar that I know. of.
Yeah, so it's,
I mean, you
Yeah.
could add a conditional. use
yeah, it
permit.
was, I believe it was adding
Adding,
one
yeah.
for EVs, but that's the general concept. It was pretty simple. And we sent it over to the planning board with the goal of them being the experts on the different zones. Because I just looked at the current zones in Portsmouth and the map said, all right, it makes sense here to be allowed to have a level 3 DC fast charger as the sole use of a property for business, well, it doesn't make sense in another area. But that was sent over to the planning board, but no action's been taken on it yet by their part.
So it was in city council, May 22nd of 2022.
Yeah.
So that's why this committee is wondering, you know, I know Kate and Josh.
What happened to it at the planning board?
So next thing I added is November and December meetings. Our next meeting is October 26th, but then things go crazy with the holidays. So I think November is November 30th meeting. And I just wanted, I know. And December 28th, which is the week between Christmas and New Year's. I don't know how many of us, I don't think I'll be here.
Well, this would put the agenda item, I think a couple of meetings ago. John Kennedy had been updating it and putting the dates and times, and we always adjusted
Yeah,
for Thanksgiving
right.
and the holidays. John hasn't been here because of other certain.
That Google Docs link, I don't think many people have.
He was the one who basically did.
I don't think people coming on the committee get that link.
No,
Yeah.
so I think we need to talk about how we're going to get the rotation set up. And when the high school comes on and so forth. So if John's not here, we need to just figure out his strategies.
Well, we can say October 26th, we have a meeting. I think
Yeah.
that's clear.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
then
Halloween
the
or
next one is
anything.
November 30th,
And then November 30th,
and then
okay.
December 28th. 28, ooh, that's tight.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of. And it's November 30th because Thanksgiving is
The week
the
before.
23rd. So
23rd.
coming Thanksgiving. So,
So we're probably gonna change to 28th.
yeah, last year, I think we moved it the week before.
We've done that in the
Sounds
past as well.
Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
21st.
21st.
Yeah,
We should tell them.
you got all those in the notes of the, yeah.
So that's the only date we gotta change on the city's calendar.
What is it in December? What would
December
it be?
21.
It would be the 21st.
Thank you.
Is that the solstice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Winter solstice, that's a good
Yeah.
night for a meeting.
Yeah,
My
that-
favorite
While we're
day.
on
come
this,
with candles.
Yeah, we should have candles. Do it up.
Right.
while we're on
Turn the
this,
lights off, really get into it.
next meeting, since who's facilitating and who's taking notes is, I think we should do this now just
Yeah.
rather than before the end.
Yeah, well, Jess jumped in, so
But
Steve DeTrolio should get it for the next 3 months.
Penalize the minute. You skip it.
No, I don't know what the schedule is.
yeah, so
I took minutes last month and facilitated this month.
Schedule.
Josh,
I
the
did that.
previous 2 months.
Yeah.
I think I was before that.
Yeah.
Josh was taking notes when I was facilitating or
Yeah,
something
no.
like that.
Seems like
So
we've been
that's why
assigning
I think we need
a
to
meeting.
Yeah,
guess who would be, and I think I might have been before that for some.
yeah, right.
So,
Herb and Steve are both on vacation, so maybe we should sign.
I saw where you were going with that.
so they're on, so Steve, we could have facilitating or, and,
And
Or
Herb
take
take
notes.
notes.
Yeah, perfect.
what?
Because Herb, I feel like did facilitate not
Yes.
too long
Yes,
ago.
he
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if
July,
he ever,
yeah.
did he ever
July.
take notes, Kate?
Oh, you and Herb switched off in July. Yeah, no, I don't
Did
think
you
he
get to
took minutes.
facilitate, Jess, recently?
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah, a few months back, like.
Yeah, you facilitated in
That's right.
June.
Yeah.
I'm still getting over the trauma of doing them in January. The best way out is to get up on the horse sometime,
Yeah, right.
some month before the end of the year.
Have you facilitated, Margot?
Yep, I facilitated.
Oh,
and-
early on, right? Did we
No,
put-
like-
Throw you right to the fire?
Right, no, right before chess.
Okay.
I can facilitate again, October 20. 6?
I put Steve and Herb in there.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
They argue
Right.
that.
Steve would be up, so.
Yeah, I
Steve
was
that.
like, I haven't seen him facilitate in a while.
And
And John Cardy, I don't think has for a while.
Oh,
No.
yeah, you're right, yeah.
I think you brought up high school students. How do we know if they're coming, who's coming, when?
So I
they're
reached
coming?
out, so tonight was open house at
All
the high
schools
school. Yeah,
apparently?
basically, because we share the calendar with the city. No offense to the city, but something about software doesn't notify when there's conflicting dates. So there's that. Anyhow, so the students were there. They are having elections for their new leaders, which I think was supposed to be this week. I think we should propose that we always have a junior, because what happens is,
We've always tried to have a
Yeah.
junior and a senior.
because the seniors right now, so like Evie is so busy with the college apps.
Mm.
Oh,
So-
not even have a senior.
No, I think have one, but I really think in terms of we get that hole right
Yeah.
now that maybe, or maybe we need to change when that happens. Maybe it's the spring of the junior's year that the sophomore gets pulled in and
That's a good
starts
idea.
coming in the summer so that there's no lag. I think would be better, because I think it's our largest club at the high school with our most consistent membership.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we can do this.
Yeah,
You know,
that's great.
we just have to really carefully think about the age a little bit better. And then it's the sporting challenge is that in the winter, a lot of the games are in the evenings.
Mm.
So in the fall and the spring, it's okay. It's the winter, the basketball games, because we only have the one gym.
Who's the teacher that oversees?
Hannah.
Is there more than
It's Hannah, yeah, she, I can
Could
never.
check her last
Hannah
name.
Newell,
Hannah Newell?
I think. Is that how
She
you
does
say it?
sound familiar.
Hannah, yeah,
Not-
DUL.
Yeah,
EUL.
D as in David.
EUL.
yeah.
Could I just check? I think you have a very good picture. Would it make sense if you could just put out a protocol? Or because so long we had a consistent with a new person, if there's a protocol that there's two people who sit on the committee, we suggest this. And if you put that and run it by Hannah and
Yeah.
maybe the students, and then we could accept that. So that would be kind of policy that the students would know. And I even think having 3 here as a backup or whatever you think would really be functional, so that we have at least 2 people here each meeting. They can support each other. And you might even put in there that it's an opportunity from previous experience that these students walk away gaining facilitation.
Totally. I think that's a great idea. I can do that.
And if you brought that to the next meeting, you could run it by us and then, we can make it as an official policy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good idea.
Just wanted to check, Jess, have I ignored you, Jess, or do you have anything you need before we go to the final item? Okay, I'm sorry, I have my back to you, so.
No, just being proactive. I already emailed Emily Thompson.
Because Wes asked to save some time, and we do have time for big ideas.
All right. Well, thank you. I threw out the wild and crazy idea of 20 minutes. There's 25 minutes left in the meeting.
No, we need the last.
15.
I'm kidding, Bert, I'm kidding.
But no, but I know the topic is big.
It
So
is
I'm gonna
big.
Say, let's say, can you keep it to a quarter after? Because we do want a closing.
Sure, I'm gonna speak for 5 and whatever y'all want to do after
Okay,
that.
that's
So my notion is that there's a lot going on in town. There's a lot happening with the climate action plan. Outside of town, at the national level, there's legislation that's going to make a huge difference on our lives. Pricing, the whole pricing conversation is coming back. We're in a process across the country of looking at permitting of transmission. If we're going to move to renewables, we have to figure out how to get the renewable energy from the fields to our households. And that involves transmission lines. Currently, it takes 10 years to establish a new transmission line. This is a big conversation, and it's a climate justice conversation as well. The whole matter of electrification, cars, houses, the whole ball of wax. Nuclear is a rich conversation. I've just been watching Oliver Stone's movie. I think it's called Nuclear Now or something like that. And the case, this is not nuclear in 1975. This is a whole new generation that needs some serious look to be informed. The bottom line for me is we want to be informed, and we deserve to be informed, and it's responsible as a civic action to be informed. So I'm essentially proposing that there be a big idea corner or agenda item, and work with you or work with everybody else on what that ought to be. My favorite topic is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which, by the way, is being reintroduced today. And
Who introduced it?
a representative out of California whose name escapes me.
Is that the end of your talk?
That's it. Sink into the. Yeah, so that's the idea.
So I have a question for notes purposes. When you say be a part of a committee, just to talk about these things, or what is your
I'm so glad you
intention?
asked that. My philosophy is that education without action is a waste of time. And action without education is foolhardy. What kind of actions? Well, time will tell, but coming back to the EICBA, this committee talked about it and then put forward a proposal resolution to the city council that was passed. First as an idea, carbon fee and dividend, and then subsequently endorsing the legislation. And the economists have spoken. 3,200 economists, including the chairpeople for the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, going back to Jimmy Carter, have said that this is a good idea. The rest of the world has spoken. The pricing of carbon exists in every country, every advanced country in the world, except for two, us and the Australians, and the Australians are working on it. And where it bears greater understanding is in the body politic. And getting past the polarization, getting past a whole bunch of preconceptions. But now I'm getting down into one of the topics as distinct from presenting the general idea. 5 minutes, I'm shutting up now.
2 responses. Just unless somebody else wants to go. First one is, I think, a big idea for us that I'm thinking from the Energy Committee. Just like the Climate Action Plan was a big idea. Now if we had our own solar field, there's going to need to be transmission. If we do wind power, there's going to have to be transmission. So when you're talking about the idea and introducing in my mind, I hadn't thought about 10 years. Okay, so part of what the energy committees can start to think about as we're moving, if we have a vision of Portsmouth having a solar field, what is we need to do now to think about transmission or whatever else? That's the kind of conversation I think is coming to my mind. Secondly, we are creating a structure for community conversations. And that was just an idea. And now we have community conversations as a structure to plug things in and a framework to empower all of us to get the ideas. So I'm thinking you're in touch with some really big ideas. You introduced me to Drawdown, and out of that came a whole huge thing. So we do influence each other. I'm suggesting now that perhaps we start thinking about next year's community conversations, and somehow some of these big ideas, like it might be the carbon fee and dividend, again, in relationship to a more specific topic. And so if we talk about public engagement, because I'm thinking we have to, in my mind, I work with a 2 or 3 year framework. We have to do something significant in 2 or 3 years. Significant. And so I don't know what the ideas are. I think we're bringing it up now is a useful idea to maybe think about it as not as amorphous as it is, but a bigger topic for a conversation. That's the possibility. That's what I'm thinking.
I just wanted to add, you posed the question on, the politics gets a lot messier. It's the thing I think about a lot, because that's kind of my background. National security policy is my background. And so I've always wondered why the approach isn't that solar is a national security guarantee. Solar, wind, sustainability, it guarantees our national security. And I would think that the war currently in Ukraine and the impact it's had on Europe would have helped that shift in people's minds around sustainable measures being our national security guarantee that we have power. And the reason why solar is so important is because you can have local grids, local solar arrays, so local power generation, rather than having to have large transmission lines that are more likely tampered with. And so thinking about, local power generation is critical, I would think, and would be for a group in the body politic that doesn't normally support these measures.
I've always felt after the scientific community, the loudest speaker for the dangers of climate change is the security community and the armed forces.
Yeah.
They're very clear what's
Yeah.
at stake.
Yeah, they have policies in place around it.
Yeah.
And concerns about sea level rise and how that, but for some reason that hasn't translated to the legislators. So
Right.
having that
Right.
bigger conversation, I think, is important.
And why I keep coming back to pricing. Have you all done the En-ROADS game? Everybody familiar with En-ROADS?
No.
Okay, so this is a model that was invented at MIT. It's been tested all over the world. And it's a model in which, and it keeps being refined, but it's a model in which you can come and put up your favorite strategy. The one that's going to have the most impact. And at the end of the day, carbon pricing is it. And carbon pricing has had a tough time. It's got the economists going for it. It's got the practicality going for it, but it needs grassroots support. It needs people broadly to understand what it is, and it's not that complex, by the way. To have it become a reality, and that's where I come back to the energy innovation, and I think it's urgent. I'd like to find a way to get this conversation back into the arena of what's going on in Portsmouth. And you mentioned conversations. Would you say a little more about that? Was that an event? Was that?
That was what you went to on Tuesday. You could be a topic for one of our community
I could be a
climate,
topic.
yeah. Or your topics could be a topic.
I like that better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to have 5 of them every year. That will help support the climate action plan and get public engagement.
Like it.
Margot, my grandson up in York played En-ROADS because I was, and you can do it as a classroom simulation.
Cool, okay.
And so they're very much interested in getting educators to use it. I think it's a little cumbersome to some degree, but to watch the kids to watch it, you realize it's a very interesting. Just do En-ROADS and watch a half-hour video of it,
Okay.
and it will show you what it does.
Well, last night at the climate meeting at the Liars Bench, Chaz, who usually comes to the meeting, has the electric bikes and whatnot, was upset because he has to pay, anybody with an electric vehicle has to pay a tax now for their electric vehicle because, and he was like, well, we got to stop this. What do we do to stop it? And I said, well, I'm not, I'm not saying you're not right, that you shouldn't be penalized for an electric vehicle. However, how do we maintain our roads if we don't get a vehicle tax? And if everybody goes to electric, we were like gone. So is carbon pricing an answer to our road tax? Like, how are we going to maintain our roads if everybody goes electric? And I mean, I guess will we charge? I mean, it really doesn't make sense to charge people with electric vehicles a fee, but I can understand the simple logic of why they do it.
We're
Like,
not
oh, well, you're driving a
gas
car and you don't
tax,
pay for
right.
gas, so we'll just have to tax you at the registration. But
Well, the Canadians have had it for 3 years now, carbon via dividend, and it's working.
does that money go to like highway maintenance? Or what does it go
Goes
to?
back to households.
Just to the people?
It has to go back to people, otherwise it's very regressive.
So the people that
Incentivizes good behavior because all the money that's essentially collected at the front end goes to the households to spend on more good behavior.
Oh, so if you use more,
If
you
you,
get less money back.
Right.
yeah, and if you,
Right.
And it turns out people of higher income use a lot more
oh yeah,
than people with lower incomes. So when you even it out, lower income people benefit the most. What a concept.
Yeah, great. That's why it'll never pass.
Well, so
It's gotta pass at some point.
So here's you remember I said economists, they're a pretty conservative bunch. Now, the really fun fact is that this was invented, literally the person who wrote down, that created the theory is a economist by the name of Gary Becker, who is a Nobel-winning economist from the University of Chicago School of Business, or University of Chicago School of Economics, rather. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. And the person who was most instrumental in getting this theory out into the world, George Shultz. And we've taken more than enough time. Thank you.
So we'll see how Jess captures this in the notes.
Good luck. Yeah.
And we'll talk further about it.
Good luck.
But I think, Wes, what you're introducing is having this committee look at some bigger ideas and trying to think about them from the Portsmouth perspective.
Yeah, these are ideas that are not going to become programs.
Right.
But these are ideas that, to be informed,
Mhm.
we should be aware of.
Right. So we usually do a closing question, and the typical one is what are you taking away from tonight? So we'll start with you, Wes.
Appreciation
We usually-
and gratitude, and the sense that I was able to follow about 50 to 60